Welcome, everyone, to our July coffee chat. I'm Laura Knutson-Murray. I'm the GIS coordinator with IrisBG, and with us today is Shannon Jones, who is our community engagement manager. The recording, presentation, and other material will be made available in our knowledge library. All of our previous coffee chats can be found there under the category Articles and Presentations. You can follow the topic IrisBG Coffee Chat and be notified by email every time something is published. These coffee chats are for you. The idea behind these sessions is that we would like to offer you a space where you can connect with your peers and have a chat about IrisBG or any issues that may arise through the work with your collection. We don't have a fixed format for these sessions, so please get in touch with me if you would like to present a challenge, talk on a topic. It can be anything big or small. Hopefully today you'll make some new connections, and together we might become a bit wiser. Save the date for our next coffee chat, which will be in September. No coffee chat in August. And the coffee chat will be what's new in IrisBG. Here's an overview map of everyone that registered for our coffee chat today. It's great to see people from all over the IrisBG community. And we have our usual poll for you to rate your experience using IrisBG. What is your level of expertise using IrisBG? Are you a novice, intermediate, advanced, or just trying out the trial? Looks like about half and half, novice and intermediate. Thank you. And today we would like to welcome Beth Hoffman. She is the plant collections manager at the Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens. She received her bachelor in environmental horticulture from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and she discovered her love for public gardens and plant records there. She's been at the conservatory since 2024. So please welcome Beth Hoffman. We will hear about rebuilding a collection, what happens to a living collection when an iconic conservatory goes under renovation. Thanks, Beth.
Thank you all for joining us today. As I said, I'm Beth Hoffman. I'm the plant collections manager here at Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens. So a little bit about Franklin Park Conservatory. This is a picture of our iconic Palm House, which is currently under renovation in our master plan project, the first stage of that. And our mission is, as a premier botanical garden destination, we connect people to nature and create life-enhancing experiences. So the conservatory is set within the 88-acre Franklin Park, which is owned by the City of Columbus Recreation and Parks Department. I've included this map just to give you kind of an idea of where we are. So the dotted line is our property, and then everything to the west or to the left is City of Columbus. We have a 13-acre paid experience for visitors that pay, as well as an outside of the fence, if you will, botanic garden experience that's inside that dotted line, and then the paid experience is the one in green. We provide horticulture maintenance for the entire property. It doesn't include things like infrastructure on the city part of the parks, but we do the horticulture on everything, which has affected some of our collections planning as well. We plant plants, but it is in conjunction and working with our partners there. And also means like things like taking down a tree that would go through the city forestry department. So it does affect our collections management. A little bit about the history of the conservatory. So Franklin Park was established in 1886, but horticulture has been taking place here for 175 years. It first started as a horticulture society. The Columbus Horticultural Society purchased land here in 1851. Then it was the state fairgrounds for a while, and then the park was officially established. The conservatory was built in 1895. It's one of 6 Victorian glass houses still standing. All early records were lost to a fire at City Hall in 1921. So that has proven a challenge both for plant records, but also our historic records. The conservatory was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1974, even without all that documentation. And so we always wish we had a little bit more. I think everyone here can relate to wishing you had a little bit more information, especially going that far back. And this was the site of an international horticulture exhibition called Ameriflora 92 in 1992, which I have a couple of slides about later because it was a huge turning point in our history. I'm calling this the horse slide. This is just some fun tidbits about the park history. So I would say our plant collections is scarce, but it's not zero. And it's a lot of piecing together different pieces of information to find things out, including things like going through newspaper articles, old photographs. So in the top left, there's a picture of a horse-drawn carriage outside the front of the conservatory. So when it was the state fairgrounds, and then for a number of years after it became a park, there was a racetrack that was located out in front of the conservatory building, and people would race carriages, race horses. There is a lot in the newspaper article about Franklin Park, mostly complaining about how fast people were racing. There was also something that we now call the carriage path that was exactly 1 mile in length and was used by hired coachmen to time their meters so that they were accurate, so they could take their coach on a 1 mile route to make sure that they were charging people correctly. The picture in the bottom right here is somewhere in the time frame of 1891 to 1900. And I was excited to see this picture because one of my pet projects has been figuring out how old some of the oldest trees in the park are and finding this picture of a bunch of young saplings planted. I had found text records of that, but actually seeing a picture was pretty exciting. I don't know where in the park this was. There's really kind of no landmarks that can tell you, like that horse trough is not still there, things like that. So maybe someday we'll figure out what those trees were. And then this fun article. It's funny, the more things change, the more they stay the same. The second paragraph says, caretakers at the park now are forced to work overtime to look after the many duties. There are only 3 and one of them. These is kept busy constantly cutting grass, of which there is 142 acres. The park was a little bit bigger than it's since been cut into 2 parks. In cutting the grass with a 3.5-foot mower, the horse drawing the mower travels 450 miles, according to the superintendent. So even then, we were complaining about things like mowing taking us away from the other horticulture we wanted to be doing. But lots of interesting things here about also in the first paragraph about what kind of plants they were growing and things. So it's been really fun to read through some of that historical record. And actually, you can see it's mentioning cannas in the newspaper article, and there are canna and things like that planted in those front beds in front of the horse carriage on the left. So in 1992, Franklin Park was selected. Well, it was actually selected much earlier than that. Was selected as the site for a international horticulture exposition. The intention was it was on the anniversary of Columbus's stepping foot in America. There were horticultural displays throughout the entire park property. You can see this aerial photograph. It was the entire thing. My favorite part is this pink cement pavement in the entrance here in the front, the foreground of the picture. It built a huge new section of the conservatory and completely renovated the historic conservatory and Showhouse at a time when they really did need to be renovated. There are pictures of steel beams completely rusted through and things like that. So it definitely revitalized the conservatory. They built 4 new biomes and established new collections, but it also cut off the community from the park that had been their park for over 100 years or almost 100 years. At the time when it got fenced off, and in ways that we're still dealing with today, I would say, because they completely fenced the entire park to construct it. There's a little bit of controversy, too, about honoring Columbus. I mean, we are here in the city of Columbus, Ohio, but some of that we're still thinking about today. I could probably do a whole presentation just on Ameriflora because it's really interesting, and the amount of things they got done is quite impressive. But it really did start the conservatory as we know it today, not least of which because that was how our current governance and board and property came to exist after Ameriflora. Before that, it was completely run by the city of Columbus. So Ameriflora had over 2.2 million visitors. This is the opening ceremony here on the right with George H.W. Bush and Barbara Bush speaking, just to give you an idea of kind of the scale of event and what they were planning. So 2.2 million visitors attended, but they had planned for and hoped for expected 4 million. So in some ways, it was a success, and in some ways, it was not as successful as had been hoped. But you can kind of see the entrance there and kind of what the look of the event was with bedding plants, huge swaths of things, pavilions, all sorts of things built. So at the end of Ameriflora, part of the contract was that all park structures and exhibits were removed, and the Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Garden was established as a joint recreation district and had a board created and a director and things like that, and were deeded 28 of the park's 88 acres. There was a small operational budget afterwards. Like I said, it maybe wasn't as successful as they had hoped. I'm not sure that ever it was planned to give money to our organization, but there was a lot of figuring out what to do afterwards. The mission, established in 1993, was to preserve, nurture, and enhance horticulture appreciation and environmental awareness, but there was no explicit collections policy or anything tying the collections to that mission. A lot of it was installed for Ameriflora for display purposes more than anything, even inside the conservatory. This is just another really interesting paper written by an Ohio State University professor who looked at historic records of the entire park and measured tree growth and health over time by comparing different tree surveys. So it's actually been really helpful because he's pointed me. I've been able to find a couple of the tree surveys that he looked at and figure out some of our how old some of our trees are, or at least get a more ballpark information about some of our trees. But he has this graph in here that is really interesting. So on the left, it's different park maps throughout the years. So you can see in the very top left, there's the racetrack and the carriage path that I mentioned. So the racetrack is the oval, and then the bigger one around it is the carriage path. And then kind of over the years, what has been constructed. The second from the bottom is 1991, all the utility work done before Mariflora. And then I would say the bottom one is close to what our property looks like today. And then the right is he overlaid everything just to get an idea of disturbance on this site. And you can see pretty much every inch of Franklin Park has had some sort of construction or path or something done to it at some point. And there's a little clear area in the bottom right that is now our community garden campus that has since undergone construction. So I would say we are pretty much fully disturbed urban site, which is interesting to look at and see. So after Mariflora, we went through a period of figuring out what to do, how to encourage revenue, and a number of master plan projects. So the first one started in 2001 and went through 2012. The second one from 2014 to 2018, as well as a number of different exhibits, art collections, things like that. We have the largest collection of glass art by Dale Chihuly held by Annie Botanic Garden. So that is part of our permanent collection that's always on display. You can see that there on the right. We started an annual Blooms and Butterflies show that runs every year. It's very popular, and a number of different art exhibits. You can see the light installment there in the conservatory, which is James Turrell's Light Rain 2. A lot of these master plan projects, it was a really intense, especially that 2002 to 2012 was a really intense 10 years of expansion, building a lot of gardens and a lot of garden spaces, mostly based on revenue generation versus plant collections. Some of the things that were built were event spaces. The bottom right is our historic Wells barn. It's a 200-year-old Ohio barn that was moved and constructed back in place here. That was moved here and constructed. It's a beautiful event space. We built a production greenhouse to support all of the activities we're doing. Constructed the Scott's Miracle Grow Community Garden Campus, which is pictured here on the left, which is a vegetable garden with some community garden plots and a lot of education opportunities, and our education department uses it quite a bit. In that second round, we built the expanded visitor experience. So that was when our children's garden was constructed, and also when a fence was installed to kind of delineate that. Some collection highlights include our bonsai collection, orchids. There on the right was our orchid show from this past winter. Our palm collection, a crane conifer garden and ornamental grass collection, and then our 4 biomes that were constructed during Mariflora. And there's still the same concepts as they were for Mariflora, although some of the plants have changed. So we have 4 biomes: the Himalayan mountain, rainforest, desert, and Pacific Island water garden. So the desert's there on the left, and the Pacific Island water garden is on the right. Plant records since Mariflora, I would say there's been a lot of highs and lows. In 1998, following Mariflora, a plant recorder was hired who wrote a collections policy, did a complete inventory of everything inside the conservatory, because at that time there was no fence. You just walked right up to the conservatory. So the conservatory was the only paid ticketed admission section. So that was where they started, and where they were building collections more. Everything else was kind of more park-esque, I would say, outside. Went through and applied and went through the process of the American Alliance of Museums Museum Assessment Program, which is really interesting to read today. I'm really glad they did that. I would say are still doing some of the same things, and both having the same problems and the same successes. So it's been good to read through, and having that inventory done then has been invaluable. Then there was a lull. That position went away for a while, and so a number of years went by. And keep in mind, master plan projects are happening in that time frame. And then a plant records specialist was hired part-time in 2016. And that was when we got IrisBG and started really, accessioning plants again, putting things into the database, making sure everything was put together. But then COVID happened in 2020. And again, our focus went back to horticulture until I was hired in 2024. And now we're fully committed again to making sure our plant records and our plant collections are top tier. I will say I put in the picture of the children's garden. The difference between record keeping when we were very focused on it is so incredible to see. The children's garden, everything is accessioned. It has all the information you could dream of. And then some of those other projects, it's a little bit like we'll have planting lists, but not where a plant came from. That kind of information has been lost. I've started to go through some of it, but it just is what it is. Those are things, our newer projects, we've definitely learned the value of putting plant records into the mix earlier on and how much that can help us. So today we are in the first phase of our North Star Master Plan. So this is a picture of the whole park property again. One of the major parts of it is the renovation of our Palm House and Showhouse that were built in 1895, but also eventually getting to totally redo where visitors entered from. So right now you enter from the east, where that circle, there's a parking lot. You enter into the visitor center kind of on the backside. And the idea is to shift that experience to entering from the west, and so that you would enter in looking at the conservatory versus having to come kind of around the corner to find it at the end versus getting that beautiful view when you walk up. So on the left is a rendering of a lot has changed actually design-wise since then, but what it will look like coming up to the renovated Palm House and the new gardens out in front. And then a picture of inside the new Palm House. So currently the floor of the Palm House is not as easily accessible. So building this bridge around will make it so that somebody right now, previously they would have had to walk, or you would have to go around to avoid stairs. And now you will be able to just go straight out and across the Palm House and experience it, and then go out a ramp in the front. So there's more than one reason to do this. Both the structure needs some renovation and as well as increasing accessibility. One of the really exciting parts of the North Star Master Plan is our slogan, Gardens Forward. We are putting plant collections and horticulture at the center of our planning. I mean, things from soil selection, what kind of glass we're selecting for the conservatory, all that kind of, just even infrastructure, thinking about horticulture first and plant collections first. And on my side of things, how we're going about that is writing a collections policy. We had that one in 1998 and one that had been written in 2018, but had never actually gotten formally approved and made it through the whole process. So writing a collections policy, evaluating the current collection. There is a lot that we simply didn't have an iris. My predecessor had gone through and done a super great job of adding everything that we knew about at the time, but we hadn't ever done the step of adding like trees we didn't know the source of. So it was like kind of a scattered looking map, if that makes sense. It had a lot of depth of information, but then it was like, but we just need to know if there's a dogwood there or not, for the construction project. We might end up taking it out, but we still need to know it's there. So evaluating the collection and then reconciling plant records as well and seeing if we can dig in a little deeper and find anything out. I'm very excited to say that our new plant collections policy was approved this spring, and that's very exciting. A lot of work went into that and a lot of information I had to learn about how we operate to get that written, and it was really exciting to get that done. We started out by kind of separating it out into what kind of documents we wanted for collection planning. So I've got this chart here just that helped us internally, both talking to other staff members and also just to help me keep things in order. Like we wanted to have a policy written first, kind of that umbrella. I'm sure everyone's familiar. We want an umbrella document to figure out the who and the why, and even down to who approves it, which is our CEO. And these were things like we just didn't have. So it's good to have this all laid out for everybody to know what we're talking about. And then collections plans I would love to have a collection plan for the whole collection, but we're going to start with things that are happening now. So currently working on a bonsai collection plan, and our Palm House has a collections plan with more the what and the when and the current status of planning and what our goals are. And then also just the day-to-day manuals, updating those and making sure we have information about how to use IrisBG, how we're making labels, all that kind of stuff documented. We are already applying the policy. Our Associate Director of Horticulture Collections and Design wrote a collection plan for the Palm House ahead of and during design, with this, the main goal for the new Palm House design, which is to expand representation of unique taxa within the palm family, selecting palms that highlight a wide variety of unique botanical features, historical importance, or cultural relevance. Kind of tying it back to our mission. And it's very exciting. We're going from 26 to 56 palm taxa in the Palm House with the new design. So quite a jump, really, for a relatively small space. This is kind of a little bit more of our background. We did a lot of evaluation with people across our horticulture staff, going through every single plant in the Palm House, identifying it. If I could find anything, I had a folder of Ameriflora invoices because a lot of it came in then, and going through it and being like, is this still here? Is this still here? Can we figure it out? A lot of it we don't know. Some of it, someone would say, well, it did come in at Ameriflora. So I ended up making Ameriflora. Like I treated it like it was a vendor that just passed off plants to us because it's important to us. Like we talk about Ameriflora all the time. We need to know that it was an Ameriflora plant, but we don't know where it came from before that. And then making recommendations. There were only 16 plants. Well, it's a little bit more. There's 16 accessions that ended up being saved after this whole process. 3 of them preserved in place, which one of them has since been removed due to some things they found during construction, and then others dug up and taken to our greenhouse, the production greenhouse. But other than that, everything was determined that it didn't need to stay or we could replace it. But the one thing that definitely stayed, and we knew from the beginning that was always going to stay, was our iconic fiddle leaf fig. As the story goes, it's original to the conservatory. I don't have any records of that. Maybe they burned. I don't know. So the earliest we can date it to is 1979. There's a picture there on the left of it with the director of horticulture at the time. But I mean, it's definitely older than that. I've seen some pictures that we can't confirm from the 1930s where it was already quite large. That I didn't include because they have a burlesque dancer in them, funnily enough. But yes, we've heard stories like word of mouth that it's from the original planting. The picture in the center there is 2023 in the old Palm House. And then on the right is this year during construction. So we have planned the construction schedule around it, both to make sure that we're moving glass not in the middle of Ohio winter, that we have to do that in the summertime, but also protecting it. Somebody goes in every day and waters it, and it gets construction dust and things washed off its leaves, all that kind of stuff, making sure that we're really, again, gardens forward, putting horticulture first and protecting this specimen. So one of my big projects has been reconciling plant records. When I started, there was a backlog dating back to 2020 of new accessions, as well as scattered records from all the previous master plan projects. This team loves spreadsheets. They are incredible. Every time I find something, I'm so excited. They have already documented it for me and put like notes about exactly where they planted a plant, and I really have found way more than I ever could have hoped for of information. I mean, there's still mysteries, but it's been great. But that all being said, it's all in different places. So for our team to use, it hasn't been easy. If you're looking for one plant, you might have had to have looked in 5, 6, even 10 different places to check if we knew anything about something, or ask someone who could remember. Things like invoices, planning documents, plans, maps, all that kind of stuff. Trying to pull that all together and putting it into Iris. So this is an example of the 2020 to 2022 planting and removals form with a 2020 spring install, which of course was being done remotely. So there was a lot of information that maybe was a little confusing. And then in the top right, this is just one of my favorite things that I was handed. Somebody was like, hey, I found this. And it is a 3-ring binder with sleep protectors in it with the plant tags for every bed. And it was like, I started flipping through and I was like, actually, this is great. Like, I mean, I can figure out what nursery it came from. I can figure out exactly where it is. So I'm going to keep that. That one's a pretty fun one to find. And it truly did answer a couple questions I had. Because I think I had found the planting list, but not exactly where each plant had gone. So it was helpful. The other really great thing that was done in some of the plant records lulls was to hire arborists and to do different tree surveys. So there are a number of different surveys. There's still one that was mentioned in that Ohio State University professor's article that is from the 1930s in the Works Progress Administration funded tree survey for the park that I still need to file. I'm going to find it someday because I really want to see that because that would really answer some questions for me. But there was a tree survey done before Mariflora in 1987 by the city forester. So that's the picture there on the bottom of the handwritten notes about trees. They went through the whole property and basically made recommendations for trees if they should stay or if they should go. There was also the city of Columbus has a tree survey. I mean, they're legally responsible for all trees in the park. So they have a survey done. That's in the upper right. On the upper left, Bartlett did a tree survey as well, but that was just in an Excel document and then in some screenshots. That was the only way we could access that. And then we hired Alum & Arbor, who is a local arborist company, to do another tree survey in 2022. So that's 4 different places of information. And I've circled, they've all had different numbers that they assigned to trees. So we were all talking about maybe the same tree with potentially 3 different numbers and 3 different places to look for information. So my project last winter was going through this and reconciling all of that. Another piece of information I used for this was the city of Columbus has historical aerial imagery that's really high quality. It's really great. They do it every 2 years. So this is from 1993, so right after Mariflora. So this has been helpful to overlay it. And actually, I pulled it into Iris and I could see, like, basically if a tree is still alive, if it was alive then, and compare it that way. So going through that survey. That 1987 survey to see if any of those trees had survived, and then maybe if like a tree looked big to me, but I could see if it was planted, because you can even see planting rings that's high enough quality, and see maybe if it was just planted directly after Mariflora. So this is trees on the day that I started. I'm glad I took this screenshot. This is trees that were on that 1987 survey that are still alive today. And this took a long time. It was really fun, but it took a long time. And then here are trees with all 4 reconciled, put together, and like gone out and ground truthed. And like, this is how many trees we have on property today. So 2,255 trees verified. A more recent development too is that we applied for the ESRI nonprofit grant and got ArcGIS, which has been incredible, really great. And getting that linked into Iris so that we can actually see where things are versus a little bit of guesswork with using an aerial image, or even some of the tree surveys with GPS coordinates, like can't tell where, you still can't tell where that shrub is underneath it. So I've created this base map working from some of our existing blueprints and information like that. You can see the difference on the left after a lot of work doing inventories as well going out. This is our community garden campus. So on the left is what we like I said, my predecessor went through and like what he absolutely knew if he had like an invoice or somebody had accessioned it, made a request, versus going through and I went through all the planting plans and added things in. And now having them in the bed locations has been very, very helpful. And this is where it was most exciting to get ArcGIS. When I started, the map on the left is an original blueprint of the conservatory built by Ameriflora with some bed locations that were used in a previous database, which again, some people were still using these old numbers. Some people were using just telling me where things were or just writing where things were, but didn't have a bed if they didn't have this map on hand. And then on the right, when you opened Iris, it was just a picture of the top of the conservatory glass. And you can't really tell where you are. You can kind of guess. I definitely accessioned some stuff before we had the map that I just dropped a pin so that at least it would show up and we could figure it out later. And so this is our current project for this year, is updating all of this to have beds, coming up with a scheme for naming them, taking it away. In the past, we had been using more descriptive names, but what does East Rainforest mean when it encompassed 3 or 4 beds? You still had to basically go and ask someone or find it in the conservatory. So separating these out a little bit smaller into smaller locations and individual beds, basically going back to that original map, but with a new numbering system that makes sense for how we work today. And then, of course, putting the points in the right place now that we actually can see them and not just the top of glass. So that being said, the Palm House currently under construction. We're really excited. We're excited to go into it with plant records and plant collections top of mind. It's a really exciting time to be here at the conservatory and really looking forward to opening next fall. Seems like it's really far away, but it's going to come really fast. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Beth. That was really fascinating to see how things have changed over that much time.